Hello all, how are you? With this spooky music, I wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for joining in. Today, I have two co-hosts, but not unfortunately, luckily, I have three co-hosts. Here I'm with a skeleton. If you want, also, you can guess how I am dressed as what. So, hello all, how are you? Greetings from the headquarters of Hack the Box here in Greece. I am Roadrunner, a community manager, hacker myself, and I'm very happy for today's AMA, which is going to be, I would say, a little bit different because it will be more of a discussion, maybe like a podcast, if you say, with two amazing security professionals. One that we are luckily having him working for Hack the Box, and you love him in our streams. And another one that we are so lucky to have him. I know him as a legend in his research and his posts. And if you do not follow him and you wanted to follow a tweet account besides Hack the Box that will inform you about amazing updates, security updates, and witty comments, I would say, make sure to follow him. So today we have with us two people, I will let them in a few, ZeroXDF and Nicholas Krasas, aka Krasan. This is the HTB AMEA. We call it do not be afraid of hackers, become one. And for this purpose, we had a CTF. It's currently still running, but the top three are decided. And each day, we had beginner-friendly content in the theme of Cyber Awareness Month. That's why it's called Don't Be Afraid of Hackers, Become One, Hack the Boo. And we have that ready. We were sharing tips all over the month. We were having an amazing CTF the past week. And now we are ending this CTF with a nice hacking talk about some of the most scary, impactful, and security incidents that made everyone terrified because they were actually pretty serious. So I will do not take any more of your time because I'm sure you are here for the pros. Let's give it up to the amazing Nicholas. Thank you so much.
Hi, hello everybody.
And to ZeroXDF.
Hey, how's it going?
It's perfect. So, do you want guys to introduce yourself? Let's start with our first time guest. I think you don't mind, ZeroXDF, Nicholas, to present some things about himself. So, who you are, who you really are, Nick.
I'm a security professional, and I believe at this time from the eldest in the industry. I started in 1999 as a security and network administrator at the time, and I continue my path since then. I love security. I love everything about security. I love the way that makes you think. I always like that it's keeping your mind active. You are looking at one problem and you are trying to discover ways to approach it and ways to go behind security controls. And this was always my passion. So I'm still here, still trying.
Still trying, nice. And what drew you to security in the first place? Because in 1999, security was an idea. It wasn't what it is today that is so robust.
An issue actually that I noticed when I started working I was working in an internet service provider, and I noticed that at the time in Windows NT, you could bypass the authentication in the system and log in without credentials in doing a dial-up connection. So you could connect to the Annex server without any credentials, and you could be logged in the internet of that time. And I found it very interesting. Then I continue with systems and network.
Nice. Okay, so by, not a mistake, by something that you found that is working, it intrigued you.
Yes.
Okay, and do you want to say more about not your what you currently do? What is your current profession?
I'm mainly working as a penetration tester, senior penetration tester, and I love what I do. It's keeping me every day and all day interested. It's a very nice profession. I wish I had more time to do research. The research in the security is something that I miss. I hope in the near future I will have more time to spend and do security research and give more to the community.
Nice. Thank you for this. And let's go now. Thank you so much for the Nicholas insight, Nicholas. Let's go now to the one and only, the people that is, I think you're getting more love than IPSEC. I don't want to create any feuds, but okay. We have ZeroXDF with us, aka David. David, thank you so much for coming again in one of the streams. How are you?
Sure, I'm doing great. I'm nowhere near as popular as IPSEC, but that's a high bar. But doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we have a nice comment. Zurich gave the wise one, and FYI, Nicholas, everyone is like, oh, my mentor is here. Oh my God, I'm seeing him on the stream. I didn't
Thank
know
you.
we have so much of hype. Yes, and the viewers are increasing. Whoa, no pressure. So, guys, so David, what are you currently doing in Hack the Box?
So I'm a training lab architect for Hack the Box. I've been working for Hack the Box for almost 2 years now. And I get to kind of bounce around and work on all sorts of things. So I get to help develop content, test content, automate some things to make things run more smoothly. It's a blast. I have a great time doing it. So before coming to Hack the Box, I had about 15 years of working in different information security roles. Yeah, been working here for 2 years. It's been great.
Okay. And I don't know if you can tease something, but what is the thing that drew you more to work on cybersecurity? Like the one that made you, wow, this is why I want to do this.
Yeah, my very first job out of college was not in cybersecurity. I was doing some technical data analysis, and I ended up working on a project that kind of overlapped with some people who worked in doing cybersecurity professionally. And I didn't know that much about computers. I couldn't explain to you how a TCP handshake worked, but I just sort of thought, that's cool. I want to get into that. And so I just started looking for ways to start working with them more, and eventually got a job over working in a security team and built it from there. One of the cool things about cybersecurity is, at least when I was coming up, 15 years ago, there was no school for cybersecurity. That exists now, but you don't have to have college background in cybersecurity to be successful in it. It doesn't hurt, but you can come in. Some of the best cybersecurity professionals I ever worked with were English majors in college or whatever, right? As long as you love problem solving and thinking technically and thinking creatively, this can really be a field for you. So.
Nice what you mentioned, that creativity plays a huge role in cybersecurity and pen testing. I don't know, Nicholas, do you agree?
Of course.
And do you have a security master or background, something like that, like you studied cybersecurity, or it was like ZeroXDF, your passion, and you followed it?
I finished university long time ago for computer science. I continued for a PhD degree in chemical engineering, but whilst I was studying, I was doing penetration testing. So I would imagine that I was studying for chemical engineering, but I was doing penetration testing for at that time, we're talking about 2000, and doing it remote. So it was known really to me that my passion is there. So
okay.
I continue there.
To me, it's kind of the same. I was in a computer science school because I thought I want to be a developer. Before I used to hack, but it was famous, to hack Wi-Fi's of people. It's not good, but back then it's not good. It's prohibited, but you're laughing. But back then it was everything plain. Everything, it was over HTTP. It was like crazy. So it was very fun as a child when you do not know all these things. But I wasn't doing something bad. I was just getting some Wi-Fi because I couldn't. Sorry, everyone. Yes, and what else? Yes, but I didn't know hacking was a thing, or that is hacking. It was like doing something alternative. Not alternative, like finding another way, which is hacking, either way, the concept. And then I studied computer science, and we had like a security course, and I was like, oh my God, you can, instead of making stuff, you can break them and be paid for it and like protect people from the bad guys, or like get bad guys, or like be the let's not go there. But whatever, this is why I love security so much, because you get to break stuff and it's so innovative. Like you, as Nicola said, you can never get bored with cybersecurity because there are so many topics. First of all, you do not need to have imposter syndrome because no one can know everything, right? And there are so many open things to know and to be in touch. I understand what Nicola said, that it keeps me interested every day because you have to learn something every day. But that is my story, that, oh my God, I get to break stuff, nice. So we can jump. I don't know, guys, do you celebrate Halloween where you are from, where you're located?
We do.
Nice. We do not do, I'm in Greece, but we did a little bit of Halloween spooky theme because of the stream. Did you go trick-or-treating, or it's not yet?
Not yet, 31st.
Monday.
Perfect. And what is your favorite Halloween movie, if you have one?
Adam's Family, of course, Wednesday.
Yeah, I don't have a favorite Halloween movie. I'll have to think about that. So sure, The Addams Family. That's the one that comes to mind.
To me, it is The Nightmare Before Christmas. That's
That's
why,
amazing.
yeah, I love Tim Burton in general and his aesthetics. And it's also inspired the whole theme and the visuals. I don't know if our design team is watching us, but when we were designing the CTF and the theme and everything, it was very inspired by this. And I was very close to dress as Jack Skeleton, but next year. Because I have the stripped suit, but I will make it. Now I'm... Yes. So let's start with the topics. So, as we said, today we're going to be a little bit of chit-chat, as we say, a little bit of not to understand, all of us. Some people analyze, and some people will learn about them. Some people will don't know them yet, or they will learn more in depth about some of the most spookiest cybersecurity incidents that happened. The first one that we will discuss, it happened in 1999. Fun fact, Nicolas joined, as I now know, that year. I don't know if it is, what happened? I don't want to spill any tea. The NASA cyber attack. I'm joking, guys, don't worry. And then we have in 2009, the biggest password leak, Rockyou. I'm sure everyone, you know it and you use it. It's actually pre-installed in your Kali and your Parrot, but do you know what happened and that leaked? So we're going to deep dive inside this today. The StuxNet Worm, if you're not familiar with this huge incident, we will also deep dive in today. It was one that we were, for some reason, you will understand the reason. It was also very popular in computers schools. It happened in 2010, and when I was going in computer science school, it was around the age. I'm that old, and and this is what they were using. In 2011, the PlayStation Network hack. In 2014, the Yahoo cyber attack. If you have a Yahoo account and you don't know about it, but you had it still then, go to Have I Been Pwned? I'm in that list for sure. Yes, and 2017, WannaCry. what can I start to say from this? It was the most difficult thing in my professional life, and I have done some difficult stuff, but this was one I was most terrified. And of course, something that happened 2 years ago, the SolarWinds hack. So these are the things that we're going to discuss today. And if you want something that you want to discuss, or an incident that you have in your mind that you want us to discuss, we can discuss it at the end of the stream. And if you have any questions for the tax, just leave it there. So let's start with the NASA cyber attack in 1999. So who wants to start? Nick, maybe you?
Yeah, I will start with it. That takes us back, and I would like to add a bit more information about the scenery at the time, because I don't know if many people will know it. Groups at the time were organized into IRC chats, and there were big IRC chats as FNet, DALNet, and I don't remember many of them anymore, where communities were formed inside, and the communities were formed in order to exchange information, exchange exploits and targets, share data from targets. It was something like what we would call now the dark web, but at that time there was no such thing as a dark web. So in June 1999, 15 years old, computer hacker, he was called later, caused a 21-day shutdown of NASA computers that supported the International Space Station, and invaded the Pentagon weapons computer system to intercept 3,000 email addresses. He managed to steal the passwords and the username from addresses, and he could use them later in order to log in to other systems like an employee. Interesting facts. His father was a programmer for 1999 to be a programmer, and it meant a lot. Not many people in that profession. And the 15-year-old was brilliant as well. The exploit was never put in public, but I can assume that it was something related to default passwords, easy guess credentials that at that time we could see a lot happening. Later on, he accessed 13 computers also at the Space Flight Center as well. And he downloaded...
Yes? Nicholas, I didn't understand that. Can you please repeat?
Mm-hmm.
He
accessed another 13 computers later on. And he downloaded 1.7 million worth of NASA proprietary software that supported the space station environment, including control for temperature and humidity. Very, very critical information if you consider the environment. NASA, to respond on this attack, they shut down the computers. They couldn't respond at the time. No incident response team were formed at that time. And for 21 days, in order to make an assessment, how big is the attack and what has been done. A lot of work at that time in order to recover from this. Yes.
Sorry, can I ask? So they shut down, as I understood, as you said, 21 days.
Mm-hmm.
What?
They shut down the computers. There is no, imagine that at that time, there is no incident response plan, there is no risk management plans, there are not procedures set yet. Even today, many companies may not even have them yet. There were no procedures, so people who did not know how to react. So even if you call the police, they will say, okay, what is it?
It's crazy. I mean, I'll add, I was in high school at the time, right? But, like homes didn't have internet then, or like we had dial-up internet. We could connect to AOL and would chat on AOL. I remember Napster had just come out. And so the idea that you could download songs off the internet, I would download a song, like let it run overnight to download a single MP3. like the internet was such a different place. Like, 20, so I don't think people knew how to respond to this kind of thing. It wasn't, this was like one of the first.
I don't know, guys, it reminds me of the meme that in case of cyber security attack, just put the plug. This is what it reminds me. I don't know if actually the image is from that incident. For someone that is asking, it happened in 1999. And what do we know if he did anything with all these things that he had and he downloaded all this? Okay.
No, he
Do we
didn't do
know?
anything. Yes. His name was later, he was identified. It's not very difficult, especially at that time, to identify somebody. There are not many connections to start with. So he was identified. Mainly, he was not identified for the NASA incident. By the way, this is one NASA incident. Being around in the chats at that time, there were many compromised systems from several agencies and information going around. He was later, he hacked later in August, like 2 months, August and October, a few months later, same year, he entered the computer network on the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, whose mission is to reduce threat from nuclear, biochemical, chemical, convention and special weapons to the United States. So he touched a very critical system. I guess he used some of the passwords that they were previously obtained from the NASA compromised systems. He got access also into 10 military computers. He was poked, and I can imagine how it would have been for him. Next day, SWAT was in his house, knocking on the door and arresting him. A trial followed after a few months, and after several months, and he was sent to jail at the time. But to be honest, it was one from just 6 months. He just spent 6 months. See, he was a minor also, so he didn't spend much time. His name was released later in the trial. Initially, it was not released in the initial documents in the trial as he was a minor, but later it was released when he passed the 17th year. So his name is Jonathan James. And there were a few more incidents that they attribute to him and his team. He was working with a team together.
Okay.
And suddenly he's not with us anymore. It would have been very interesting to hear the story from his side as well.
For sure. Yeah. I think, I don't know, I want your input, guys, because at that point, even to do something that for today is not such a sophisticated attack, as you said, Nicholas, when you have access, at least maybe to think like that at that point, shows an amazing way of thinking. And so he must be a brilliant mind, even if he did something that was bad at the time. I don't know, what are your thoughts about it? It shows brilliance.
It shows brilliant. Consider the age. He was 15. Yeah. 15 at the moment. If you're talking about 15 years old at the moment, most of them, they will tell you Minecraft. He was hacking in NASA and in military computers. So there is a big difference.
It's huge, yeah. Such a shame, but it's at least it created, I think, a pace afterwards that hacking is something, because now we have a lot of young people in the community, and I'm amazed by their talent, but it's such easier now to get access to all these resources, and back then it was insanely difficult.
There's a very nice website that provides also information and assistance. You may join it. Hack the Box is called.
Thank you, Nicholas. Nice product placement there. I didn't expect it, but thank you. ZeroXDF, anything from your side about these or similar attacks or something that you want to comment on?
No, I mean, I this one is one where I only know about it in history. You know, when I was a kid when this happened, and I was not paying any attention to computers. So it's but again, it's just you got to remember how different the world was back then.
Yep.
So
we can move to the next one. The password leak that created one of the best password lists ever. I will say, don't know if I should say this. Maybe it's a thank you now. I will rephrase. Maybe it's a thank you now because it made people, assessments and testers, their life easier when it comes to find passwords. And then if you are also into getting hashes and you have all these equipment in order to crack the hashes, etc. This is something handy to have. And I know a lot of people, or at least a lot of teams internally. You do not have to tell me yes or no if you do it, that they create their own passwords. It's like they take Rockyou, but from many assessments that they do, like they enrich these lists in order to make sure that things are not getting repeated, and they fix everyone, not for their own purpose, for sure. And in order to crack the rest, and I think I remembered from a pen test that a friend was telling me that it was the password that they cracked was in Greek, and it even had like spaces in, but they cracked it like, I couldn't believe that something like this could be cracked. It's crazy. So, biggest password leak ever, Rockyou. Nicholas, I see you're nodding. What do you want to say about it?
Because it was trivial.
Okay.
This is the thing. It was trivial for 2009 also, but also for now standards. We don't know exactly who identified the initial exploit and how this was, but we know how this was released. In a hacking forum, it was released in a forum thread that there is a SQL injection, a trivial SQL injection in the website. Rockyou, for people maybe they would not know about it, was a very, very big startup that started working with Facebook, and they were creating applications. And think about it like the Zynga now. They started together with Zynga. They were more dynamic at that time. I think they were bigger than Zynga. At that time, Zynga. They were competitors, certainly, same tools, same promotions, and very bad techniques. Very bad. I think that it is one of the examples of what the companies should not do and how they should not respond to also in incident responses. The initial exploit, as mentioned, it was an SQL injection. It was put in a forum, but the person who put it in the forum, apparently it was not the same one that dumped the databases. Somebody else in the same forum later on started the initial dump of the databases. And at the end, it led to 32 million of user accounts being released. Some problems. An incident can happen to anybody. That is something that we have to accept. Anybody can have a security incident. Nothing is unhackable. Nothing. It all depends on the time that the attacker will spend. What was wrong there? The passwords and all the information was stored unencrypted. So the passwords were unencrypted, and that's why we have a very nice password list from Rockyou. There was no need to decrypt anything, no need to spend more time. The response from Rockyou was initially to downplay the whole incident and treat it as nothing major happened.
Sure. Oh, really? 32 million accounts were affected.
all the database, all the user database. But they treat it like nothing happened and everything is going well. Eventually, they had more problems, infrastructural problems, procedural problems, and how to handle this incident, which led to, I don't know if the company exists anymore or when it stopped existing. But we really thank them for a very nice password list that they have provided to us.
I'm actually pretty sure they did go out of business in like 2013, I believe.
They made an additional mistakes in the process that you don't do. Overall, if you think about it as a company policy, there is another incident that happened to them, minor, but as a business, it was impactful. They were sending information to their third party companies, and for example, they were not using BCC. When you're using BCC in the email, you don't show up the addresses of the list. They put all the emails in CC. So, and I think it was the CEO who did it or somebody high in rank. And they had all the partners listed there that they are using. What happened was that the next day, Zinca, that it was a competitor, approached these parties and offered them a better reward. So they lost a significant number of developers, companies that they're working with, like this. The CEO apologized for it, and he said that it was a mistake that's not going to happen again. And it happened again, I think, 2 months later from that incident. So organizing and the way that the people were taking into consideration little security, manners, hygiene, and so on, it was not there.
Okay. Not adding people in BCC is something that, I don't know, it happened even to me from in a CTF competition that they said, I don't know, maybe I don't want to say the marketing team because it's not, those people know, I don't know who did it, but they replied to all, not winners, all participants, thank you, blah, 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 and they replied with CC. Okay. What it strikes me is that you said that they treated this incident as nothing major happened. Didn't people I don't know, asked a lawyer? Wasn't something else happened?
At that time, we didn't have the fines as they are now. If this is going to happen now, the company will go bankrupt in a few months from the fines that they will have. But at the time, there was no such big fines that they will impose in the companies.
Okay. Ouch. And what has, since then, have happened such similar password leaks that comes to your mind?
We have the LinkedIn.
The LinkedIn.
There was the LinkedIn incident. I think it was 2010 or 14. I don't remember exactly. There was a LinkedIn. There was a WeChat, the big one. One very big hosting provider also that was compromised, and all the client information were released a few years back. As a number of accounts, I could say these are the biggest.
Yeah, the ones that strike you the most. And say, David.
I was going to say, at the risk of sounding repetitive, it's important to think about this one in the context of what the world was like, 12, 13 years ago. You and I, people watching this, are probably all very used to, you get onto your Parrot OS or your Kali OS, and there's Rockyou.txt sitting right there, and you've got sec lists, and you can go pull all these word lists, and they're all just available to you. When this came out, a pen tester at the time in 2009 didn't have access to million-word password lists. It wasn't out there. And so if you wanted to do like a password spray or some kind of brute force, you kind of had to make up your own list or figure out how you wanted to do it. And when this hit the darknet or whatever the forum, the breach forums or whatever they're going to be, pen testers were starting saying, wait, we can use this. And that was like a novel creative idea at the time. Like, again, that we all take it for granted today, right? Like, it's kind of an unwritten rule on Hack the Box that if you're meant to crack a password, it's going to be in Rockyou. And we're just like, because we're just kind of used to having it, right? But like, this was like unheard of to have this many passwords that were real passwords that people might use that you could actually play with.
Wow. That is striking, and I'm trying to think of that it should be more targeted back then, because you couldn't password spray. You should create a list, okay, with I love you, etc. But if you wanted to check on someone, you should check their name or like.
It's probably a bad example. Yeah, you shouldn't be password spraying with Rockyou. That's a great point. If you're doing network brute forcing with Rockyou, you're probably either trying to be really loud or going about it the wrong way. But when it comes to hash cracking, is really where Rockyou has made its money, right? Or it's gotten famous, is because now all of a sudden, when you get a bunch of hashes, because since 2009, best practice really is to hash your passwords, right? Now, when you get those, you can bang it against a list of millions of passwords and see if the common ones are going to fall out.
It was also one very good example to show the frequency of passwords, do a frequency analysis and present, and how you had a very, very, very large list of 32 million. So you can have a frequency analysis and say that my top 10 passwords are this. And you know that this amount of top 10 passwords it's going towards to the, 5% or 10% of the whole list, which is a huge number overall in order to consider it. So you can modify your ways, your tools, your whole process, and say, okay, at least I will do these 10 passwords because there are chances.
That's a great point.
Yeah. And also there are, I don't remember how they're called, but there are some specific additional lists that you can put on Hashcat that they do mutations of the original password in order to make sure they work. I don't remember how it's called. But it takes a password and it changes regarding of that list as well. So it takes another list.
You apply like Hashcat rules, or John, you're talking about to like manipulate them and take a word and add an exclamation point to every one of them, or add a symbol, or make it lead speak.
Yep, lead speak or something. Yeah. I think what we can take out of this is that, for sure, do not, if anyone is a young developer, do not create databases that have passwords unencrypted, because the one that you said, Nicholas, that he hacked and he didn't have to do anything else because they were not encrypted, it shook me. I didn't know that. I didn't expect that, to be honest. And for sure, create something that, not as we did about password tips, personal details are for your diary, not your password. So try to keep it away from there and create something else. We are all people, hackers, we know mathematicians, we know mathematics. You can create something like equation or anything. It can be different. Let's go to the next one. I believe you, again, Nicholas, you want to say more. I don't know if you want something, guys, to consider, to say about the previous incident. David, do you want to add something to the previous, about Rockyou? Okay. StuxNet Worm. What was that? Because I think it changed everything. So what is the StuxNet Worm for everyone that doesn't know it?
A very sophisticated tool of set of tools that created over a long time. And now this worm managed to infect more than 20,000 devices. It was highly targeted for 14 Iranian nuclear facilities and managed to ruin around 900 centrifuges. The worm itself did not do any damage outside its target. And if I remember correctly, if it was going to infect a system which did not have a specific setup that it needed, it was going to stay either lurking or it's going to be removed from the environment. Who created is the good question there. There is no team or no attribution on who created. It is at the moment it is mentioned as it is intelligence agency of US and Israel created this piece of code. It's highly sophisticated. It exploited several vulnerabilities in PLCs, in Siemens software, in Windows libraries. It had 0 days exploit that we hadn't seen until then anywhere. It included capabilities to remove itself from incompatible systems, later on reinfect clean systems. One big thing that it could do when it was going to infect one device, it could withstand also reinstall on the device. So it was going to be present after reinstall on the device. It had a lot of checks that it was performing in order to be sure that it maintained its place. Additionally, one very clever part, it did not destroy, it did not have a direct impact. It was causing impact through time. The worm was identified and it was made known in 2010, but it is said that existed development and spread of it existed since 2005. So possibly it was there for already 5 years. And what we don't know is the actual goal. It was never known for us what was the actual goal. Yes, it was infecting Iranian nuclear plants, and the target was to destroy the fuel-enriched plants in the centrifuges, which was going to cause a cascade effect in the power plants. You're essentially taking the whole country out of electricity. I could imagine blowing up also things in the way. But it did not. We don't know if it meant to destroy or to destroy through very, very, very long time. So, okay. Like a sabotage through time effect. Also, what is not known to us, because we haven't seen the actual results of something being destroyed, if it succeeded at some point into what it was doing, or it failed midway.
Okay, I have several questions. I think like I'm a student, or I'm dressed like Tuesday. So the chain of attacks that you mentioned, that it included, I understand now why you say it was a toolkit, it was a tool. And all these 0 days, what it makes me think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that they had access to something similar, or they knew how it looks in order to create something so successfully, something that is so custom fit. I don't know if it makes sense, but it's not that there is a technology, you know it and you go, but it seems like it was something that it was made just for this.
I believe the same, and in order to create this, you need to have an exact replica of the environment in order to perform this attack. It was not checking just for the system to be there, it was verifying the versions as well. So it was targeting specific versions of software, of PLC, or devices that they were there. It was very, very specific on the exact attack that it was performing.
Yeah. If do you know more about the exploit? If you want, you can explain it more, like into detail. It sounds very interesting.
It consisted of DLL injections. I'm trying to simplify the list here because there are many attacks. It could spread laterally through infected networks using removable networks, print service, network connections, Siemens semantic databases. It could infect SQL databases.
Wow.
It had many pieces of. It could inject its code block in the PLC. It had a lot of options to infect.
Yes, sorry, Xerex, there go.
This always makes me think of we actually had a hack the box called Drop Zone. That one of the vulnerabilities, it was different in that apparently Stuxnet used like a SMB vulnerability to start getting execution, but you actually went after the same vulnerability in this box. And I remember it because it was a really, I learned a lot about how it worked doing this box. But basically there's these things called MOF files, which are almost like WMI. It's like storing WMI information in a text file. And if you could write this MOF file to a certain place, Windows would process it and actually create the WMI instances that you want and effectively get execution that way, and I believe a system. And so not to like shill hack the box stuff, but you go play with the old box Drop Zone, and you can dig into, I believe it was, it's MS-10-061 is the one, there was lots of vulnerabilities on this one, but that one I thought was really interesting. It's one that I always remember.
I didn't know. I know that I have done Drop Zone back when it was. I think it was released a very old box.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Let's see. My blog post from it is from 2018. So yeah, it must have retired in 2018.
Perfect. So that's why I was still hacking a lot. It strikes me that from you, because you mentioned all these chained attacks. Okay, we said that it's custom fit, like it was tailor-made, let's say. But hacking PLCs, what? Was it a thing back then? Maybe it was the first time that it happened.
It was the first time. It was the first time, and also the first time that it introduced the idea to the business community and InfoSec community that something like this can happen, and it is happening actually.
Yeah, because my point is that when we do competitions and we have a track also in Hack the Box, and we were also this year with hardware and IoT challenges at DEF CON, not a lot of people know and play this stuff in 2022. So I cannot even imagine what knowledge and what dedication you needed to have back in the days in order to hack a PLC system. Mind blown. Like, if I could put memes here, I would put this one. So it was the first time a PLC hack.
Mm-hmm. And the first time that we saw possibly something that derives from the work of intelligence agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And if you recall, the next time that we saw it was a few years back with the Shadow Hunter stamp, where there were released several exploits.
Shadow brokers.
Shadow brokers, yes. The shadow brokers.
Shadow workers.
That was so again the work of intelligence agency and exploits that we never have seen before. A very large sum of exploits.
Okay, shadow workers. You said I'm searching them.
Shadow brokers.
That will come up in a later topic.
Okay.
No spoilers.
Perfect. So I will keep it to explain there. But just out of curiosity, of course, it might be not disclosed or anything, but do we know something? Now that I'm thinking, because it's so tailor-made, the same attack cannot be used somewhere else.
No.
So, but other things that were affected by StuxNet, Worm, but you said at first, like it couldn't affect something that it didn't want to affect. It was tailor-made. So yes, you replied earlier my point in the question. Thank you. Wow, Paul, this is huge. I'm mind blown. That's why security is so cool. And for something that is next level, I don't know how to, very mind blown. Let's go to 2011, the cyber attack on Sony PlayStation Network. Maybe it's time, David, to start speaking about it.
Yeah.
Spill
So just setting the scene. By 2010, Sony, PlayStation, and Xbox are both starting to come online. They're starting to have this idea of, when I was a kid, you had your Nintendo and you played it and you had to have your friends come over if you wanted to play with them. But, now here we are at the end, by 2010, we're starting to get networks. And in general, Xbox is considered to be pretty far ahead of Sony on their network at this time. And people were enjoying kind of modding their PlayStations and messing with it. And Sony puts out some patches for the firmware that basically tries to lock it down and kicks any modding out, basically says you only can use our exact stuff as it is. So early 2011, a guy named George Holtz successfully cracks the firmware and he basically starts distributing a jailbreak from his website for your PS3. And Sony quickly sues him. They go to YouTube and they say, give us the IP address of anyone who watched his video. They are going with straight litigious, just trying to take down anyone who's trying to do this, right? And this really pisses off Anonymous. And this is back in when Anonymous was a big thing, the hacking group Anonymous. And so they put out one of their cryptic messages, and I brought it here so I can actually read it. It says, "Congratulations, Sony. You have now received the undivided attention of Anonymous. Your recent legal actions against our fellow hackers, GeoHot and Graph Chocolo, has not alarmed us. It has been deemed wholly unforgivable. Knowledge should be free." And it goes on for a little bit, but eventually says, "You will now experience the wrath of Anonymous. You saw a hornet's nest and you stuck your penises in it." Excuse me. "You must face the consequences of your actions, Anonymous style." Right? So they put out this real big threat. And the first thing they do is from April 4th through April 7th, they basically DDoS the PlayStation network. And it's down, it's unusable, no one can use it, right? But they realize after about 3 days that the people getting punished here aren't, Sony's not really getting punished. It's the people who want to play Sony games that are getting punished. So they basically apologize. And they say, "Oops, we don't think this was the right move. We're really sorry. We were just trying to hit Sony. Sorry to all the innocent people who we impacted." And they stop. So that's on April 7th. On April 20th, all of a sudden the network goes down again. But this time, Anonymous is not taking credit for it, at least not publicly. And Sony kind of comes out vaguely and talks about it. And basically what happens is somebody, presumably Anonymous still, hacks into their network. And so when Sony detects it, they basically just freak out and take the whole network down. It's kind of similar to the NASA story earlier, right? But they need to try to figure out what's going on. And basically what comes out and what ends up happening is 77 million user accounts were compromised. And that's names, addresses, birthdays, logins, emails, purchase histories, credit cards, which it's kind of unclear whether they're encrypted or not, expiration dates, password hashes. The largest data breach up to that point. It's a big deal. And it's also out in a very popular, gaming is a very huge community, right? So it's out in the mainstream press. You're seeing this on the news, and which is not something that a lot of hacks had made their way onto at that point. So it was very well known. Sony claims it cost them $171 million. The PlayStation Network was down for 23 days. And also the other thing to remember, today, if you want to watch Netflix or whatever, you can go on. You can go on your Roku or your smart TV. Those didn't exist back then, but streaming was just starting to become popular. And PlayStations, there were people who didn't play games but went out and bought PlayStations because that was how you made your TV a smart TV. And so this took down that all as well. All of that stuff was offline. So it was really kind of a wide impact across the world, the consumer base. So it just, again, it was one of the biggest breaches in history up to that point. It was also Sony did a really bad job communicating. They were very vague. They said very little. Everyone was just sort of speculating. And it was one of those things where they lost control of the narrative, and everyone was just sort of talking about how out of control it was and how much they lost. And, they didn't say much to really try to take control. So it's kind of looked at as a poor job on that as well.
And because you said about credit cards to being theft with IDs and everything, do we know if all of those data will be weaponized and used against, or they just said that, okay, we have you, we got you?
It was one of those, it's always hard to know when credit card fraud is happening all the time. It's always hard to know, like, did it come from this breach or that breach or something else? Sony did purchase credit. It's the classic. Here's a year's worth of credit monitoring for all impacted, that kind of stuff. So I think they tried to help mitigate it, but it's hard. It's always hard to tell exactly what happens to credit cards once they get into the wild.
Wow. Okay. And I love that. First of all, for me, I will start from the beginning, from the thing that you said about the incident. For sure, now everyone would act different. So, of course, a company to freak out, but chase the people, the users, to everyone who saw it, to be captivated or even told off. It's insane.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
It makes, not to piss Anonymous off, but actually to feel that I'm punished for a mistake that you did. I don't know what you think, but it's crazy. And do you know about that point, if any? So first of all, in their message, they spoke about GeoHot and Graph Chocolo. Do we know what they did to them, or what happened to them? They went to prison?
No.
No. Go ahead.
GeoHot is a very successful hacker in the mindset of the hacker, I would say. He's a brilliant person. There are some videos of him doing open CTFs that you can see him coding and attacking systems. Just a piece of art to watch him. And he continued his career, and I believe he still has a very bright career as a developer. At the moment.
Wow.
I believe, if I remember correctly, I believe he settled when Sony went after him. He eventually settled as sort of he agreed to stop hacking PlayStation stuff and putting it out publicly, and they agreed to drop their lawsuits. And it was sort of a
Keep in mind that he has hacked. He did the first hack, I think, for the iPhone, the iOS SIM, and later on Android. For the Android as well.
So after that, after he did the jailbreak in SunStation, he jailbreaked iPhone, or before?
Before, I think. I think the iPhone was before.
Cool. I say cool because without those jailbreaks, iOS pen testers would be nothing. Like, at least, yes, because when you have to pen test an application like that, you have to install the application in an all iOS device that can be jailbreaked and blah blah blah, and then it is your first finding. It installs in a later application in a later version, and it goes on. But you have to jailbreak first. Those days, I love them. I love iOS hacking. But they're so sophisticated. I don't know about you, like this jailbreak, it needs a mindset of its own. I'm amazed. Sorry. These things are, I love them. I don't know how to say it. So, okay, he jailbreaked, and he did. We have also Ipsek on the chat, who is supporting you guys, and he's saying, hey, Ipsek, he says that GeoHot now owns a self-driving company, AI. Whoa. For sure, it must be secure. So, GeoHot, idea. if you're watching us, what would you think if the next cyber apocalypse we contact you and we have, maybe for finals, a card for the people to hack? That would be amazing. And it can be like a 0 day. You can bring it there patched and that I don't want to jump at this to bring it patched and say if it has any exploits. It reminds me on my moderation days in Hack the Box, one guy submitted just a Windows machine, just this. And I was trying to find what it has, and it was just a patched thing. And I said, okay, I'm not that clever to find the 0 day, rejected. If I was, it was before SMB and not before SMB, before WannaCry. So yeah. And now that I said that, no, we will not go yet to WannaCry. We will go to the Yahoo cyber attack. Before we go to Yahoo cyber attack, I will do a controversial question to you guys. What do you think of this move from Anonymous Group? If you want, we skip this question or we continue. It's free.
Based on the current job status level, we should condone these activities, and all such activities should not be taking place.
Exactly.
But I'm also not fan of any denial of service attack or any spamming. I don't think them as hacking attempts. I think them as a poor attempts from people that they don't have a skill in order to produce something else.
And it's very bad to punish. You shouldn't ever take action in your own hands, whatever is happening in your life. Not that karma will get anyone. No, that thing doesn't exist. Something did something bad, get over it. Go after it and chase and do this kind of actions is not the great way to go. Sorry, David, I
was going to say the same thing. I don't have a ton of sympathy for Sony here because I don't love the way they're acting, but the answer is never to take. I don't believe the answer is to take it into your own hands and try to, vigilante justice just doesn't seem to, you end up, it's A, you get yourself in trouble. B, the people you end up hurting along the way, the 77 million users whose stuff got leaked, right? Like, yeah, Sony, it hurt Sony, but it also hurt them. And they had, I don't think that's ever the right answer.
And it's also something, I will put a funny note here, something that everyone should know, that the hacking or targeting someone for personal reasons is not the way to go. Because we have one of the most common questions that we get in support, in our Instagram, in our Discord, in our Twitter, DMs, everywhere, is hack my girlfriend. I loved also, I don't know if one line here is, he created also the first one response, another response, guys, I don't know if you know it. First, get a girlfriend. Step 1, get a girlfriend. Step 2, don't do this. It's not happening. And when I was at first as a community manager, I was replying, the trust of every relationship is the foundation. So if you want to hack her, most probably something is wrong. So instead of focus your intelligence and your time on hacking her, grow your hacking skills, because hacking is amazing. Something off the table, but yeah. Let's go now to another huge cyber attack that I was also harmed from, and at least Yahoo was very famous back then, the Yahoo cyber attack. Nicholas, do you want to explain what happened?
The Yahoo cyber attack has a very nice in the term of hacking attempt start. Everything began in 2014 when a spear phishing email was sent to several employees in the Yahoo. We don't know still how many of the employees were targeted in the attack. But of course, in these cases, you don't need many. You just need one to click in the email, and it will provide you a certain access in the system. At that time, as it is documented now, a Latvian hacker was hired by Russian agents and started poking in the network. He managed to get. He looked for two things: the Yahoo database and the account management tool, which was giving him access to edit the database. He found bots, and he managed also to install a backdoor in the Yahoo service that will allow him access. In December of 2014, also he stole a backup copy of the Yahoo databases, and he transferred to his computer. There were some issues while the access was maintained. One issue was that Yahoo had encrypted passwords, and the tool also that they were using, the account management tool, did not have access to search directly on the usernames. So they couldn't target. Again, to put you in perspective, this was a worldwide company as Yahoo is, but being US located, it was targeted by Russian parties at the time.
Okay.
And from what they were trying, from the audit that it took about 2 years, they identified what was being accessed at the time, and what was being accessed were several accounts for journalists, government workers, online workers, a Swiss Bitcoin company, Russian-related journalists, US government workers, and accounts like that. In order to be able to get access to this account, as they could not retrieve the password was encrypted, they could only generate nonces, cryptographic values that are used in the cookies. So they could know how the cookies is formed. They could generate the key for the cookie, and they could generate a cookie itself. So they were using cookies in order to authenticate directly as the user. From initial amount was 500 million account that they were potentially accessed, but there were only 6,500 accounts that they were generated cookies. So definitely these 6,500 were accessed. Later on, and 2 years later, actually, from Yahoo, it was announced that there were 3 billion accounts being compromised.
Whoa. The first thing that I would like to mention is that as we see the progress of cybersecurity, we see also the progress of attacks. We had password attacks, and now we have attacks with the nonsense from the cookies and generating cookies. That is something beautiful, if I could say, because it's a beautiful attack, and it's something I think it is a technique that you use at pentest tester. You take the cookie, you check if it works, if you can generate, if you can reuse it, all this stuff. So is a very up to date. It's also very soon. It's 2014. It's not that far away. And when you say that there were 3 billion accounts compromised, you mean that the cookies were lit, or that they were actually hacked?
They were not hacked. They were not accessed. But he did have the database. So he had the names and encrypted passwords of 3 billion users.
Okay. Well, but only the 6,500 were compromised. Yes. Okay. And does anyone take ownership for this?
Ownership. There is a name, Alexei Belan, but ownership, I believe, again, from what it is written, it's from Russian agencies. Namely, they're referred in the news as Russian spies. But for that, we cannot put words in certainty.
Whoa, that is huge. I remember this attack because it was at my end of the university, and it was mentioned, and we were discussing about it, and it was around when I started also working in cybersecurity, and how it happened. I see that we said about spear phishing on employees, but how did they get access there?
From the initial email, one single email, let do everything. One single email.
Spear phishing attack to the this is huge. Yeah, this is
we still see it a lot happening. We have a slightly different approach these days. You have seen it maybe in your emails. Anybody who's working in a company, in a big company, would have seen it. An email coming to your mailbox from your CEO, which actually has only the name of the CEO, but not the email address is not correct. And it will ask you by name that please help me with something. I need something to be done urgent. This is a phishing attack, spear phishing attack, that it is targeted to companies' employees.
Whoa. The thing is that this attack, although it's 2014, it is something that you could face, even as you said, in the pentest days that you have now, that you do. I mean, the spear phishing and people opening. I don't know about you, but I love to when we're creating phishing scenarios. That's why I have also scenarios to the CTF. I love creating a concept. But it seems it is from almost 10 years ago, and it's something that we see. That can show me that the cybersecurity awareness and the training is not there what it should be yet, maybe. I don't know. I don't know your thoughts, guys.
Human, where there is always a human factor to take place. So when you will see an email, if the content is well created enough, you may click on it.
Yeah.
We in our job, we are trying to prevent that. We are trying to raise the awareness for the users in such cases, but there will be cases.
Yeah.
There will be cases. There will be people that they will click in the email because it really seemed urgent. It really seemed important.
Wow. And yeah, David, go ahead.
I was going to say my memory of this event. I don't remember what year we found out about it. It was probably towards the end and probably after it was patched or whatever, or fixed. But I was working on a security team at the time, and we had to play through in our heads what happened. How do we protect our company? How do we protect our network from an email from a legit Yahoo address of like one of our senior executives, right? Like one of our CEOs, or like if the CEO or like an important manager, if their Yahoo address emails one of the employees and says, please do this, this, and this, no one's going to suspect that, right? And how do we protect against that when it's coming from the real email address? Like we'd kind of thought through before, okay, how do we detect lookalike email addresses, right? If someone registers an email address that isn't theirs. But if it's a real email address they've emailed with before, how do we protect people against that? That was a real challenge. The idea that someone could just get into Yahoo and craft cookies and have whatever account they want, like that's a real tough one to think about how to protect yourself against. And we'll get to, I think, the last hack, and we get to SolarWinds and start talking supply chain. But in some sense, this is like almost the first supply chain attack. If you can get into that Yahoo where you can forge cookies, now all of a sudden, what are the downstream consequences of that? And it becomes really hard to defend against.
Yeah. Sure. Go ahead, Nicholas.
No, you.
Such a gentleman. No, I wanted to say that in my experience, because I don't want to take any credit of it, but because I'm not because I'm a girl, but like I like things pretty, neat. The emails that we were creating when we were creating social engineering campaigns were beautiful, and we had nice, and we were nurturing the domains and all this stuff. Like the hard part was, at least when I was a pen tester in 2016 and after, it was like to make everything seem very true. and to have realistic domains. And but we were still getting through. And I don't believe I'm that sophisticated in order to create that kind of attacks, because I was not an intern, but it was very young. I think that the posture is very low. Go ahead, Nicholas, you wanted to say something.
Oh, generally, when an attack involves the human factor, is very difficult to prevent from. One case that a case that I would like to see also is the social engineering attack. There are some really great experts in the area who perform attacks. They have videos, and you can simply not believe the way that they are creating it. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. When I was in my university, I was not my master, my bachelor degree. We had a student that was helping us, in the workshops, and he was actually taking psychology lessons in order to create more sophisticated attacks. I don't know if he sees us right now. He is working in Barclays in the red teaming department. He's called Candias. You might know him. He's quite known and amazing. Shout out to you, Mitos, if you listen. And he was creating and he was showcasing even the words and everything. I understand what you say. And it might be an interesting AMA about social engineering attacks and creating something meaningful, not just press this because you will lose access. Beautiful. We can go to the next one. And I already know who really wants to talk about it and share his tears with us. So we have, drum roll, WannaCry ransomware in 2017. David, what happened back then? Share your story with us. We are here.
This is an interesting story because it's going to involve three different intelligence agencies, or at least, none of this. We don't actually know any of the attribution stuff, but it's kind of widely attributed to based on the sources that are out there. It starts with we talked a little bit earlier about the shadow brokers, which is attributed to be a Russian government thing, but it's basically a group of people, hackers, who start leaking stuff on a group known as the Equation Group, which is loosely attributed to be the U.S. National Security Agency, and so they're dumping data out there, and in their fifth dump of data and tools in April 2017. There's included in that is an SMB exploit. And now that exploit was patched a month earlier, MS-1710 by Microsoft. But it also is kind of colloquially known now as Eternal Blue, because that's what was labeled in the dump. And basically, this exploit, if you can get access to SMB, which is open on a Windows machine, you can become system. And so this leaks in April, and it's out there in a sense that basically, there's a Metasploit module for it. There's a Hack the Box box called Blue that literally I don't think we'd publish a box like this today because it's too simple. You point Metasploit at it, you get both legs. You're done. But this vulnerability comes out, and it's a big deal. The word, for a while, there's kind of a buzz in the intelligence community, in the information security community about could this be wormed? Could someone put this into a worm and let it loose on the internet? And, it's good that this was patched in March, but we all know that patching doesn't just happen the second patches come out, and that especially large companies often take a while to do that. And so in May, a worm does release, and it kind of causes panic. I was working in a SOC at the time, and I remember it was it was a Friday afternoon, and the worm, rumors of this worm going around got out there, and we basically said, we need to know if we have any SMB facing the internet now, because otherwise we're going to be in trouble. And luckily we were okay. We actually were in pretty good shape. So it didn't ruin anyone's weekend. But so anyway, this worm is going around, and it's acting like ransomware. It encrypts your computer. It puts up a message. It didn't really work though. It wasn't, and in the end, they raised less than $100,000 despite going across over 200,000 computers, 150 countries. This is largely attributed to be the work of the North Korean government, although no one really knows why they released it. Did they intend to release this just to kind of cause panic? Was it practice? Was it some capability they were developing that escaped and got outside their control and sort of going wild? It's unknown. The other interesting story about this one, though, is the code had what was kind of referred to as a kill switch in it. And that's to say,
Yes.
before it did anything bad, it did a DNS lookup for this domain. It was a long random domain. And assuming that domain failed, which it would because no one had ever registered it, then it would continue on and do its thing. And so there's these researchers. The one most famous for it is a guy named Marcus Hutchins, who is looking at this and sees that and goes, I'm going to just register to this domain and see what happens. And it really ends up slowing down the worm hugely. I mean, this could have been so much worse. There's a really interesting talk from B-Sides Liverpool by a guy named Jamie Hankins, who was working with Marcus at the time, where he kind of like details day by day WannaCry and how they figured out this was going on and how they registered it and how they ended up setting up a honeypot domain to see how many because now they registered it, they can see how many computers are connecting into it, because every time it exploits something, it tries to connect to that domain. So now they control it and they can see it. So it's a fascinating talk. I'd recommend it. But anyway, this worm's going around the world encrypting stuff, and there's all this chaos because it's just indiscriminate, right? The National Health Service in the UK got taken down for a lot. I remember hearing stories of these huge multinational companies who they had one domain controller that happened to be offline for maintenance at the time, and everything else in their entire domain got ransomware. So they had to put a guy on a boat to go down into Africa to collect this one domain controller, because they didn't trust putting it back online, and they wanted to be able to get it and replicate it, so they didn't lose everything. I can't remember exactly which company that was, but there's just this huge the world. It's like if you had SMB open, your whole network could have gotten wrecked, and it was like the biggest worm going around, definitely since like Conficker back in 2008. So it was a huge deal. And thank goodness for the kill switch, and thank goodness the patches had come out 2 months earlier, because if timing had been around a little bit differently, it could have been a whole lot worse.
Whoa. And actually finding the kill switch must be very interesting. Yeah. I like what you said, that they will travel to Africa, you said, in order to get, it's like, it reminds me of the IT crowd scene. Here is the internet and I'm holding it, like here is the server. and holding it with their hearts. Oh my God, it's hilarious. I remember this attack because I was also a sysadmin back then. It was a nightmare. And the funny thing is, because I don't know, because I'm located in Greece or anything, but my first domain admin was by using this. And I was very happy and proud. And then my manager told me, okay, you didn't do something huge. It was like press and enter. It wasn't something, but it was amazing that after 2-3 years, it was still working. I loved it the moment, but then he destroyed it because, yes, I didn't do something huge. It was there in Metasploit. And that was something. And I remember it that I was taking a certification. And I was like, okay, I can take the flag by using this, but that will not be in the exam. It is from the exam. It's widely known to everyone. What I would do. So, okay, I was getting the flag at first when I was training, but I had to find also the original exploit because they have patched everything in the exam at the end. But it was amazing either way. I loved this exploit. And I remember it very vividly because I had, after that, I thought I would find it everywhere. Sadly, no. But yeah, I got one domain admin. It was amazing.
It does inspire people to patch. Like if people were being slow about patching, this is a good push to get you going on that, because otherwise you're going to have new computers.
What they were saying, it's like, no, that can be found by everyone and it's that easy. If it's that easy, you should patch it. This is not how we say, it's not a feature. It's an actual vulnerability. Yeah. It's not intended. And
strange thing is that we still see it in some cases. We still see machines that being exploited by.
I do not believe it. It cannot. No, really. I have. Okay. Because I see people in Hack the Box and I'm like, oh, this is CVE and no one is having CVE outside and blah, blah. But I wouldn't expect we would find MSF.
Reality is different.
Oh, I mean,
Okay.
there's still some of the older worms that are even older than like we went back in this conversation, are still floating around the internet because there's computers that got tucked in a closet somewhere that no one ever thinks to update again, and it's still sitting there with vulnerable to everything, and every worm on the internet just comes over, plays with it for a while, jumps on and starts spreading from it, and that stuff will just never go away.
I remember when this was the worm with the PDS, I was playing all day. I don't remember who it is or who it was. There was a tool that you could just use it in Linux, create some PDFs, were sending them. I don't know. I don't remember because it was like, you might remember how it was. Image Tragic, that was another amazing thing. What days? And now we can, no, I will ask something else. So ZeroXDF, you were working and you were searching for SMBs open from your work. Nicholas, where were you when this exploit happened?
I was working also as a system administrator, but I had only Linux systems.
Oh, okay.
At that time, yes.
I can imagine you being like The Godfather, the movie. You are like that with a cat here and a ring, and you're like,
watching the others.
Yes.
Watching
Let's
things
see the others.
explode.
Okay, that must be very fun.
This is one of those ones where I always think of our one of the guys on our infrastructure team who yells at you whenever you say the word should, but like nobody should have SMB exposed to the internet, right? SMB is not a protocol that is made to be hardened against the world talking to it. So if you're doing things, if your network is set up correctly, this shouldn't have gotten to you. But like when things hit the real world, all the shoulds start to fall apart, right? And that's where one exception one time, and then it's a worm, so it gets through the one crack, and now it is exposed internally, and that's where you get in trouble. So
that's true, and I don't know. I have been hacked. I know it. But I don't know if you, like sometimes that you have not used the best practices and you understood that you were hacked.
I'm not sure if I've necessarily been hacked, but I know a number of times where I've caught myself being like, well, I would always tell everyone never do this, but I guess I'm going to do it here because I'm lazy and I don't want to actually do it the right way. Seems hard. It's really hard to do everything right, for sure.
What about you, Nicholas? Have you
Not
been
that I know of.
Yeah, I'm actually happy that I know it. I'm not sure if it's happened again. And to me, it was with a Bass Bunny. They were not that famous back then. And it was black. And then I bought it one myself and I was playing. Bass Bunny is so amazing.
It's very nice.
Yeah, it's very neat. You can do some amazing stuff. Sorry, I seem like, but I am in love with security. Then we go to the last one, attack for the day, and we can chat for any other things that you want to mention, guys. The SolarWinds hack, the supply chain one. So do you want to say more about it, David?
Yeah. So SolarWinds is actually a company that makes a product called Orion. And it's a network management tool. And so when you start to get to these big networks that have, 100,000 computers and hundreds and thousands of switches and routers and stuff and all sorts of infrastructure, for an admin team to manage that, you're not just going to like SSH into things one at a time, right? Like you need a product like this to manage it. And so it's a pretty big company that, especially in US networks, but worldwide, honestly. And so somebody, again, this is one of those ones we're going to say it was APT-29, Russian government. Evidence for that, it's there. It's not solid for sure. But somebody managed to exploit into the company SolarWinds and get into their build process. And so basically what they did was they pushed out code that was a backdoor to anyone running SolarWinds. And so this thing would beacon home and connect to them. And so roughly, there's roughly 33,000 customers of SolarWinds, including a lot of like big US government networks, big US companies, especially. Now, SolarWinds says 18,000 of them downloaded the update that included the malicious backdoor. Now, it's not like immediately clear to us how many of those. So you have 18,000 companies whose SolarWinds server is now beaconing back to presumably the Russians. That's a lot of companies to triage, but they can start to look and say, oh, who's talking to me? Who do I want to actually go interact with? So it's not actually publicly known how APTNet 29 got into SolarWinds. There was some scuttlebutt going around like about an FTP server, a password for an FTP server getting posted in a public forum. The password was like SolarWinds 123. Now the company denies that had anything to do with the intrusion. So again, we don't know for sure, but that's possible. Then I guess at the end of the day, this was like kind of the first major publicly known supply chain hack, right? This is the first time. So, we can defend against our network getting hacked, but at some point you have to trust what's going on around you, right? Like I have this chip. If I trust that this chip is going to do what it's supposed to do, right? I have this RAM. Okay, now I have this computer. I kind of trust what it's going to do. But like if people can just push things in through supply chain, like how do you defend against that? And that's it's been an issue that's been being discussed for a while, but this is the first like major attack that we saw really pulled off that way. I will say that the attack came to light because FireEye was one of the companies who was running SolarWinds, who had their SolarWinds server infected, and I believe actually the person who attacked, the attacker here, started interacting with them. I believe they actually registered a new phone with them. Anyway, they were taking actual steps beyond just the beacon of the original one. And FireEye detected it and started tracing it back, and eventually reverse engineered the SolarWinds update and went back to SolarWinds and said, "WTF? Like, why is this in your update you sent me?" Which eventually, they worked with the government and the FBI, et cetera, and got this out publicly. But it was a big deal because now you have, if the Russians have had some period of time with unfettered access to your network, it's worth mentioning SolarWinds. The Orion has to run with like high privileges because it's managing everything, right? So it effectively is root admin on everything because it has to be. That's how it does its job. So you've basically got some number of weeks, months, maybe even longer with the Russians having access to your network as root user. How do you flush them out? Like, how do you recover from that? And that was a big question going through, again, a lot of US government networks, a lot of big companies in the US and worldwide. So it was pretty significant, pretty big deal.
I'm speechless. First of all, it is amazing that their client found it and traced it back. It's like, pun intended, and it's also fire. I also kudos to them. So this has been used. Do we know how many companies were affected by this attack?
So 18,000 companies downloaded the update. I don't know that we have any way to guess how many of those did the Russians or whoever this was, actually go in and start interacting with and trying to advance beyond that. That's hard to say. Because again, even if your company even if you did go and do IR and find they did go into your, they did more, you're not going to go sign up, report back to anyone. And there's no one's keeping that list, right?
Yeah. Okay. And in order to, it's not like where someone comes from. It's a hacker. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any difference where they come from or their ethnicity or something. Yeah. I just wanted to clarify it for everyone in the stream. It is also how soon they disclosed it and what happened. Do we know? Like, okay, they understood. FireEye found it. And they came back. How was the disclosure after, if they announced anything?
They did. I mean, they did announce it. They came out and said, this happened. We take your security seriously. The standard stuff. I don't know a lot about, where it went from there. It was kind of more of a, okay. I mean, I'm not sure what SolarWinds could do for you at that point, right? At this point, they obviously put out a clean patched update that you could update and get that specific box fixed to remove that. I believe, I didn't look this up, but I believe if I remember correctly, it was using DNS C2 at least partially. So, you could, if you had DNS, there's lots of IOCs floating around that you could go look through your network and logs. For personally, this is actually just as I just left my previous job to come work for Hack the Box. So I had no personal responsibilities for this.
Okay.
I didn't do much I didn't have access to gobs of data to go dig through and figure out impact because was basically done working at my previous job. So, but the information was out there so that people could go and try to figure out what happened. But a lot of people had to roll IR based on this, and based on just doing the right thing, which is installing the update, right? So,
and it's something that is nice, as we said before, for the other attacks that Nicolas also explained, that they're changing. Not okay. Now we see the cookies. Now we see then we see the PLC. Who knew that you could hack a PLC? Now you see also that they hack the supply chain in order to to infect more and more. Like they're not getting more sophisticated on the exploit, but on the way and what to target, like what it makes sense to hack. So the supply chain, from that aspect, it sounds very clever. I have never pen tested something like that. I have never, so I don't know. But it's cool.
It's funny you say it that way because I always, I gave a talk a year or so ago about how I really enjoy doing playing with phishing documents and reverse engineering them. And one of the reasons I love it is because it doesn't have to be technically more crazy. It doesn't have to be really complicated. It just has to be creative, and they have to think of different ways to get around things. And I always kind of think of that as when I think about phishing documents, but you're right. It kind of applies to everything, right? Like all hacking doesn't necessarily, I mean, it can get very technical, but also if you can just be creative and think of interesting ways to approach it, you can often do it with very simple exploits. Again, I don't know exactly how they got into SolarWinds, but if it was a password on an FTP server, or even if it was a phishing email, right? Simple stuff. If you get in the right place, all of a sudden now you've got a backdoor in 33,000 networks. Like that's a pretty big win.
Exactly. Yeah. Find the new ways, like that go from, okay, now we go to PLC, now we check nonsense, now we check the supply chain. It's amazing. The
SolarWinds had one more key information that David mentioned earlier. The system itself, as it is created to supervise networks and supervise other systems, and it had access to multiple systems. So by having this one compromised, you had access to the whole network directly. It was very critically positioned.
Nice.
If I knew my network was hit by this, and if I knew that the attackers had actually gone into my network, I don't know how you get them out, honestly. I mean, the amount to ever feel comfortable that you've completely gotten them out of that network, I'm not sure you could do it. It's a real challenge.
The real challenge also from attacker perspective is how do you manage the whole information? You have access to a vast number of systems that you don't know directly where are they from, what do they contain, and what is inside that you can exfiltrate. It takes a tremendous amount of time.
Yeah.
Also.
Oh. Well, and that's why, we can say 18,000 networks downloaded this update, but how many did they actually have time to go interact with and triage and figure out the value and figure out if they want to maintain persistence? I mean, that is a ton of work. That's a great point.
Yeah. So if we had to say that there is one key takeaway from this topic that we discussed today about the horror stories, what it would be from you guys?
It's very difficult, this one. This one is very difficult. When you are talking about supply chain attack, it's very difficult on the way that you will go in order to prevent it.
Yeah.
You have to keep a track of everything. You need to have a great asset inventory in your company, and you need a very good way of doing the updates to verify everything that you have and keep everything in line.
Nice point. And what about you, David?
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is the whole, I know zero trust is kind of a word that gets thrown around now as like the next is like a buzzword, but the whole idea of you have to always, whether it's SolarWinds or the Yahoo thing, always assume breach, assume that something is, don't trust everything. Always be skeptical and think that, oh, how could this, what if a bad guy was here trying to attack? How would I recognize that? Would I have alerts in place? It's really a mindset of defense is really hard. And, but it's also, that's what makes it exciting, right? Is that you can, there's always put yourself, you can't just like sit back and say, oh, I'm done. Everything, we're protected. You got to always be thinking about what's the next way something's going to come in. And so it's interesting for sure.
Thank you. I think also these sum up a lot of not how this can be prevented, because nothing can be prevented. It's like how is it called? A physical disaster. You cannot bypass it, like something that happens. And for me, it is that you should always be informed. Maybe you cannot track of everything. Asset inventory, as you said, huge. And to track everything huge, but try to be informed and close to the security updates and incidents and what is asked, because the fact that we find WannaCry, internal blue yet, it's beyond me. I couldn't imagine it. But that's the end of our talk. I don't know if you want to mention some other attacks that struck you the most, guys, that you want to mention, or we can wrap up.
For my side, only one thing. We have recently attacking many attacks in blockchain environments, which are very interesting, but they are a complete different topic with a lot of assets being stolen, millions that it's in many attacks, which are very interesting topic also maybe to see at some point.
Yeah, the blockchain attacks, nice. And it's a new era. And what about you, David?
You mean like other attacks that could have been on our list?
Yeah, something like that, or something that struck you the most, but we didn't discuss it today.
I mean, I mentioned it a little. I have interesting memories of Conficker was a worm that went around back in 2008. That was, it was fascinating because it was running around exploiting this. It's one of the few. It's MS08067. I don't remember that many MS numbers, but like 1710 you remember, and MS08067 was another SMB vulnerability running around, and they were just owning huge parts of the internet, and no one knew why. And there was all this speculation as to what was going to happen at the end. Was eventually they're going to shut down all these computers, or were they eventually just going to? And eventually it kind of just fizzled off and went away. And it was kind of a bummer of an end. Well, it was a good end, I guess, in a sense, but like, all the intrigue about what's going on here, it never really led into anything. But it was kind of fascinating. There's just a ton of vulnerable computers floating around.
Okay, let me Google it. You said it is
MS08067.
Yes, I remember it because I used to use it in some in my OCP training, in Hack the Box, something like that. I remember it.
It's a very reliable exploit.
Yeah. I remember it, yeah. So that was all. Thank you very much, guys, for your time and your wit and your wisdom today. It was actually very fun. I think it's one of the AMAs that I really enjoyed because I learned many things today. Thank you for that. And I don't know if you have something to say to the rest. For me, it is just that everyone please stay safe, and we'll catch up soon. Nicholas, anything that you want to say to the community?
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you all. And thank you very much for having me today here. David, appreciate also your time.
And you, David, something that you want to say?
Thank you, Sodi, for hosting. And Nicholas, it's great to be on here with you. And thank you, everyone, for hanging around. This has hopefully been fun. I've enjoyed it.
Bye,
Stay
guys.
safe.
I'm going to remove. Perfect. And that was it. Another MEA came to the end. Thank you so much. I'm here with, he's probably still waiting for MS17 to patch everywhere. Yeah, thank you. Make sure to leave comments. It will be live on YouTube. We will put also timestamps per attack, so you can go there. We will have also links of the Twitter of the amazing professionals that were with us today, to follow them on Twitter, and also David has his channel on YouTube. So you can go and check out more of their tips. As of me, thank you so much for being here. We don't take it for granted. Have an amazing rest of the day.